Welcome to another podcast in our Theology 101 series. And today we are continuing with part 3 of the larger topic of humanity. And if you're following all the way through from the very beginning, this is our 15th podcast or post if you have the written PDF as well. So, under humanity, in part 1, we focused on our created essence as humans to love as we are loved. In part 2, we focused on the reality of how things go wrong in our world and in our lives. The traditional biblical word for this is sin. Now, in parts 3 and 4, I've split it into 2 parts because there was just so much that was important and rich to cover, and I wanted to make it a little more into bite-sized pieces for you. So today we are doing part 3, and next time, in another 2 weeks, we'll do part 4, and we are focusing more specifically on the Christian life, with God above, beside, and within us, powering us for living love in all its dimensions, despite the challenges and struggles, to live love. How do we find the inspiration to open our hearts to God in faith? The faith to carry hope in the face of all that can discourage, and the empowerment to love despite all the ways we are entangled in the stress, hardship, suffering, and conflict of life. How do we hold on to faith in God? How do we experience resurrection in the midst of dying, metaphorical and literal? And how do we rise up to loving in a world where fear is so prevalent? Well, let me begin by noting several important things. One is a very important word in the Bible, grace. And let me quote from the New Testament letter of Ephesians, Paul's letter, or the school followers of Paul's letter. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not of your own doing. It is the gift of God. Grace means love as a gift. In fact, true love is always a gift because it comes not as some kind of calculation of what is deserved or earned. It's not based on merit. It is based on gift of love of the heart. It's the best imagery, biblical imagery, is that of a loving parent for a child. We love our child no matter what, and we love our child. It doesn't matter what they achieve or do not achieve, what they do or do not do. We don't measure it. Love just comes from a very deep place within. This is the imagery that we have of God's love to us. To experience that we are loved infinitely, completely, despite everything, deficiencies or compensations or whatever. To experience that kind of love flooding our hearts, that is the experience of grace, of divine grace. And imagine what happens in our lives when we feel such love and act out of such being loved. We love in return. We love others. We give them room. We have compassion. We are open even to forgive despite wrongs, because this love is more powerful than the hurts and all those things that can sap love and harden our hearts. This is the experience of grace, and it's at the core of the Christian life. To be judgmental, to be bitter, to be angry in a way where hate and contempt and treating people or thinking of them at their worst, lacking that kind of generosity. This is a sign that we are not experiencing the grace of God flooding our hearts. And so at the core of the Christian life is the experience of grace, love at the heart. Second, with grace is the experience, this is God's love in us, is what we call the Holy Spirit. This is the movement of God through Christ and the gift Christ bestows of his ongoing presence through this same Spirit, this movement, energy, power of love. So this movement and energy flows through, and as we experience it as grace, the gift of love. But the actual movement, the flow, that power, that energy we call Holy Spirit. So to experience the grace of God, to be activated by this love within us, is the movement of the Holy Spirit. And at the core of the Christian life, the very foundation, these two things, grace and the movement of the Spirit, are essential. So when we think about these two things, what kinds of qualities of the Spirit emerge? When we see them, we say, the Spirit of Jesus is active in this person, in this situation. Well, there's many. There's, for instance, the gifts of the Holy Spirit that are listed in Galatians, Paul's letter in Galatians. There are many ways the Spirit is, obviously the umbrella, at the top of the umbrella of all these qualities is love, for sure. But let me highlight a few just because they're important. One is gratitude. A sign of the Spirit of Jesus, the experience of grace, is gratitude in a person. Gratitude is the recognition, a feeling, an experience that despite all that is wrong and all that life deals us, we are thankful for all we've received and all we're able to give. Gratitude empowers us to see the good rather than get sucked into the bad. Gratitude is real regardless of a person's situation, regardless of our situation. Gratitude lives in us, or we find it again and again. It rises up in us. That is a sign of the Spirit flowing through. Another important word is humility. Humility is openness to others, openness to hope in what can yet be despite what is. Humility is a recognition of our need for others and our interdependence with Mother Earth and all life in it. Humility is a recognition that but for the grace of God go I. Humility, right? I need others. I need you. And I need you, and I'm grateful for you. And that inspires a beautiful quality in relationship if you respond, if you reciprocate in kind, and we spread this. It's like a ripple. And our world needs this ripple of love in this kind of humility, gratitude, interchange. Another important word, generosity. And generosity as a spiritual quality is not about money as a spiritual quality, as it is about believing and hoping the best of people and seeing the good despite the bad. Generosity refrains from judgment and gives others the benefit of the doubt. We need a lot of generosity in a world such as ours, where fear causes us not only to mistrust others, but to judge them at their worst. A couple of other important words. Paul mentions them a lot. Love needs the spiritual gifts of faith and hope to fulfill its goal of reaching and blessing other life. Right? Love needs the spiritual. Faith and hope carry love. Faith is trust in God's love moving in one's life, and hope is openness to what love can yet accomplish in and through one's life, moving beyond oneself, right, and into the future. Without such trust, faith, and openness to love, hope, we cannot fulfill love's healing and transforming possibilities in and through us. We need faith and hope to carry love and to live out love. Finally, I also want to name the spiritual quality peace. Okay? Despite how unstable and disruptive life can be and how variable life's circumstances, to experience peace as a spiritual gift is to know and feel deep within that we are held in everlasting arms, that as we live and struggle for truth and justice, we are in God and God is in us, no matter what we lose or suffer in this life. To know such peace, even in key moments of life, is a wondrous gift of the Spirit. In part 4, we will discuss several more important topics when it comes to a Christian life rooted in love. For example, You know, there was a debate 500 years ago when Protestantism first began. You know, we are told that we are to grow in the Spirit, to grow as Christians, to grow in love. But does that mean that we have less and less a struggle with sin, with anti-love feelings and movements and currents in life? There are at least two very different ways of understanding what growth looks like in a Christian life. Anyhow, that will come in 2 weeks. But thank you for taking in this podcast. And if you want a more organized way into some of what was shared orally, take the time to meditate on the PDF, the printed or written copy. Thank you.